Hey guys, what is up? Big Reviews here, back again with another video. I know it's been a while. I am so sorry. I've had a really busy August, and I know it's halfway through September. Leave me alone. I was on the biggest cruise ship in the world with my mom. We filmed it all week. It was a blast. I have a big video coming up soon with all this footage. If you remember my Icon video, it's essentially that, but kind of more in-depth and a lot more footage of the ship. And also, quick side note, I do have my Marvel Timeline video coming out. Those videos are always so long, and they take so long to edit. And I filmed it 3 times and I edited it 3 times and it messed up 3 times. I didn't like how it came out, so I ended up not using it. So I will have that out soon. But this video is a little different, as you know, on this channel, or as you probably don't know. All 189 of you do know that I've been trying to do some new things recently. On this channel, we really talk about movies, mainly because I love talking about movies, as you can see, nerd shit. But recently I've been doing some travel videos, and now I just want to talk about some books that I come across because I've been getting back into reading. And this big one is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Now this is a phenomenal book. If you've seen or read The Martian, it's the same guy who did that, so you know he's gonna cook. And I've heard about this book for a while. I read some of it when it came out. I think it was back in like 2020 or 2021 it came out, maybe earlier. I don't know when. And I never like really finished it. I don't even know what happened. Like, my memory's so fuzzy on it. So I'm still counting this time as like the first time I read it because it was like a lot of new stuff for me. I've actually had this book for like a year or two now, but I never read it. And then because I have a lot of books on my bookshelf over here that I have to get through, especially the Odyssey. We're getting ready for Christopher Nolan's film. I have to reread that. And they announced that Lord and Miller are doing a movie adaptation of this film starring Ryan Gosling. And if you don't know who they are, they did both Spider-Verse movies. They are freaking great, and their humor is amazing, and they're able to balance tone really well, and that's good for this book because if you've read The Martian, you know these books can be funny, and especially since this book is kind of like The Martian, where it is first person and you're in the mind of now Ryland Grayson, that it's gonna have that same tone. We're not gonna get into spoilers because there's a lot of things in this book that should stay hidden if you are planning to read it. The movie trailer did spoil a big part of this book that's not advertised at all in the back or anything, so we will be talking about that in spoiler section, but trust me, it's worth the talk even if you haven't read the book, and if you don't plan to, I will talk about it here. This book follows Ryland Grace. He wakes up on a spaceship. He has no idea who he is, why he's there, or what's going on, and that's basically the mystery for the first, I'd say throughout the whole book, but mainly the first third of the book is finding out who he is, where he is, and why he's there. Who, what, where, why, how, feel, you know. And it's just such a great mystery to grip you into the story, because the problem with doing this book, and the problem with not knowing the spoilers right away, is this book does really feel like The Martian a bit. He's alone, stuck in space, and he's monologuing and stuff, and he's funny, he's cracking jokes still. And so the first like third of the book, you're really getting that vibe, and then stuff starts switching up, especially once he meets a certain character that really changes this book and makes it better than The Martian. This is easily one of the best books I've ever read. I read it in one day on the cruise ship. I was on my balcony just reading. It was a vibe. But this movie talks about a lot of themes. It talks about what sacrifice means. Is being selfish okay in some scenarios? Because, you know, he's now by himself, and as you learn about this stuff throughout the story, you find out about people who are signing up to go on this trip and probably not coming back. And you know, is it okay? Like, are you supposed to just be the bigger man and doing it? Or in Ryland's case, you know, he's never really stood up for himself or anything. And that might be okay too. You'll learn about that. This book really centers on friendship and how strong of a bond and how far you can get with friendship and how it can test its limits and just trust in another person. And again, I can't talk about much before we get into spoilers, but that is the biggest theme, I think. One of the biggest themes is friendship. And one of the big ones is betrayal, which I cannot talk about this at all until we get to spoilers. But if you've read the book, you know that betrayal is a big part, especially of the third act of this book. That plays a big part in how you feel about that person, even though they've been put in a specific scenario. I love the protagonist of this book. Ryland Grace is a great character, and I think Ryan Gosling is going to be like a fantastic version of him. Obviously, I saw the trailer first, but throughout the book, I can easily see how Ryan Gosling would play this character, and seeing from the trailer, I mean, he kind of looks exactly how I pictured Ryland Grace with the hair and stuff, and it's just great. Like I said, the first third, now the pacing never really stops in this book, and because one point you'll be on the spaceship, next point you'll be in a flashback, and it's really keeping the mystery up. This whole, we never got into the main plot of this movie or this book yet, which is the sun is shrinking, and they don't know why. There is a line that you see in the sky, and they basically call it the Petrova line because the person who found it I think her last name was Petrova, and basically this line is sucking light from our sun and causing the sun to shrink slowly. They have about like 15 to 20 years left before it will cause irreversible damage to Earth. And they basically find that this line where it travels, all the suns disappear except one, Tau Ceti, which is a real sun. And any planet that's mentioned here is also a real name planet, which is pretty cool. If you don't know Andy Weir, or if you haven't read The Martian or anything, he uses really good science and like really correct science. Now, obviously, here and there might be some stuff, especially in this book, where he's making up his own biology in a way, and some other life forms is all I'll say. He's making up a lot of that on his own, but it is based in real fact of science, like parts of their microbe and all that, and their biology. But when it comes to our science, it's pretty accurate. There's actually a funny story where Hank Green said he got an early copy of this book, and he found an error in one of the science things. He actually reached out to Andy, and Andy fixed it. So Andy really cares about being right. Again, if you read The Martian, you know, like, a lot of the stuff in The Martian was right. You could hypothetically grow potatoes on Mars, anything to do with air pressure, or, you know, doing a slingshot maneuver, that's all real. And this book doesn't shy away from that. There's actually a lot of moments in this book, like multiple paragraphs in a chapter, where he's just talking about the science. And it really makes you grounded in this world, because obviously it's in our world, but let's just say, like, especially like the fuel and a lot of the main thing that makes up that Petrova line is not real in real life. It's something that Andy Weir made up for the movie. So, but they make you believe that it could actually be a thing, and the way they use it and the way they study it. And any science experiments he does, they never just have him say, yeah, I tried a science experiment, it didn't work. They explain to you what he did, using what instruments, and why he did it, and how he got his result. And it's really crazy. I mean, it's kind of hard to follow at times, but you kind of get the gist of it. He writes it in a good way where Ryland's explaining it, and Ryland almost knows that whoever's listening or you know, obviously, or reading what he's saying isn't going to be a scientist, so that's the easy way for them to kind of explain it. But guys, let's get into spoiler section, because it's really hard to talk about this book when 2/3 of the book I can't really talk about. But before you go, if you are gonna read it, or if you're gonna wait for the movie, then I give this book like a 9 or even 10 out of 10. I mean, I'm trying to get new into books, so I don't know how my rating system works, but this is one of the only books I've read in one day, and I was just really intrigued with. And this character I'm about to talk about really makes the movie, and this character I'm about to talk about is one of the reasons why, not Ryland. And yeah, that's all I'll say right now. But yeah, let's get into spoilers, guys. The one of two plot twists in this book that, actually, this is the one that the trailer spoiled, and I'll tell you what I think about that, is that Ryland is not alone for most of this book. He is actually with an alien called Rocky. Rocky is a life form that's, I think he's like a pentagon or a hexagon or something, and he has 5 arms, and he doesn't speak English. Obviously, he's another life form. I think he sings, and then Ryland basically makes a program to where he can like take the vowels and stuff, or like the sounds of Rocky, and figure out what letters they are, and then he's able to communicate with Rocky. That's one of the biggest parts of the book, where you really just have to like believe that he did that. I mean, he learns thousands of words in like a week or two from Rocky. So like that's one of the obviously the book wouldn't happen if he didn't do that. So that's one of the things you have to be like, all right, cool. But Rocky is such a great character. This dynamic they have, him and Ryland, it's just so great. It's like, and it also brings you almost to tears at times. I mean, and we'll get to that towards the end of the spoiler section, because it's at the end of the book. But it's so cool to see an alien story that's not about aliens killing and all that. It's just two people from 2 different species coming together for the same thing. His Rocky's son is dying as well, so he's there, and he's basically in this giant ship. And as you find out later, all of his crewmates died except him, because they didn't know about radiation in space, so they all died from radiation except Rocky, who was near the engines, because, and we haven't even talked about this yet, this is probably the biggest driving point of the whole book, of astrophage, which is the new biology thing, like little microbes that make the Petrova line, and they're basically little small black creatures that suck sunlight out, but they can hold an insane amount of energy. And if you can get them to move and stuff, they can push things really fast. So this is how they're able to get the Hail Mary light years away so quickly, because they use astrophage in their engines. So that's the main thing, is astrophage. And Ryland Grace is the leading scientist on Astrophage, because you meet Strat, who is this government official who basically has priority over everything. She can get anything you need instantly, and she's basically the type of character that does some heinous things in this book. But she's really hot-headed, and she seems like she doesn't care about a lot of things because she really doesn't. But she's trying to, at the end of the day, save humanity. And she's one of the people that they know emotions won't play a thing in, and she makes the hard decisions. So you can kind of understand that part of her, but then another part, no. And that's where the betrayal comes in between her and Rylan. And basically, what I talked about earlier with the acceptance into the science field, for example, Rylan basically made a paper a while before the book starts talking about how not all life needs water. And he thinks that, like, just because, like, we need it doesn't mean, like, every life form needs it. And basically it kind of like soured him from the whole science community, and he became a teacher. So now that he's the leading scientist on Astrophage, he has to come in, and everyone's like, oh, I don't know, I'm kind of wary about it. But yeah, Rocky and Rylan's dynamic is what makes this book. Just them talking about their different habitats. I forgot the pressure. I think it was like 3-1 or something. Or like 3 psi or whatever for Rylan, but Rocky is 29 psi, so they never really touch. They never really, like, Rocky has to stay in his own pressurized thing. He has his own material that he's able to form. He has a lot of it. He's able to make tunnels and stuff, so he's able to be with Rylan and work with him and stuff. And yeah, so then they just get to work on finding out about this Astrophage thing, and I was really interested to see where this goes, because, you know, it's not like you're fighting a sentient life form. You're fighting a life form at a biological scale, and they're trying to figure it out. And you find out that just events happen where obviously then it comes down to Rylan's not able to get back. He doesn't have enough Astrophage, and he basically comes to terms with, yeah, I'm gonna die out here. But then you find out that Rocky has a lot, and he'll give him some, and then they never really fight. And it's honestly a cute friendship. I mean, Rocky's cute. Now, he might look like some freakish alien, but he is really cute. Like, they have, in his culture, you have to watch people sleep. So anytime Rocky sleeps, he asks Rylan to watch him, and vice versa. And he is just a cute guy. And there's times where I started almost tearing up towards the end. I mean, just with how he talks. And there's some really iconic things I really hope they touch on. Like, every time he asks a question, he says question. So he's like, what's the PSI in that room, question? Or he's like, question, what's the PSI in that room? Like, stuff like that. And they do jazz hands. So anytime they do, like, a big experiment and it succeeds, they do jazz hands like that, because he has 5 hands. So he can just go like this and have the other 3 stand. And it's just really cute moments. And yeah, the other big thing you find out towards the end of the book, and this is the big one that they're not going to show in the trailers for the movie. That's why I think it's okay they showed Rocky, because I think that'll bring more people in. I mean, Ryan Gosling in himself will bring people in, but I think showing Rocky will... I just hope they don't show too much of him. I think as of right now, we've seen enough of him. And even if they make a trailer 2, which I know they will, maybe one more shot of Rocky, but I think they should leave it for the movie to see his full design. Because over the years, like, if you go on the Project Hail Mary Reddit, I love seeing people's interpretations of Rocky and what he looks like. And I just can't wait to see what the movie lands on. But the big twist is you find out that, because Rylan basically wakes up in the beginning of the book with 2 dead comrades, and he has no idea how he got there or even who he is. And so by the end of the book, you find out that Strat... So they needed a biologist on board, or someone with Astrophage, I forgot which one it was. And the guy basically backed out or died. I think he got blown up, and they needed someone to replace him. And basically, there's only like a few thousand people in the world who are able to be put under for sleep, because they have a gene in their body that they're able to get through it without dying. So Strat basically reveals that it was her plan to put him there all along, and he doesn't even have a choice, and this is where the big betrayal comes from. So you find out that he was put on this mission against his will. She sacrificed him for the small chance that he could send info back to Earth. He has 4 little rockets on the Project Hail Mary that he can send stuff back to Earth, so they'll be able to fix it. They call it the Beatles, because it's all 4 named the Beatles. And you basically find out that, yeah, he was sedated and he was put on the rocket ship and he woke up. And then you eventually, you find out that his 2 comrades didn't make it because they died in cryosleep. Something happened. So that's why he's alone. And that's the big twist. So I really hope they don't reveal that in the trailers. I don't think they will. I think that's why they're leaning more with Rocky, because Rocky is this book. I mean, you really can't talk about this book without him. And I feel like it just makes it more interesting. Now, I still think a lot of people were mad that they showed him, but like I said, you can leave a lot of the mystery out, because you see an alien, you know, you don't know if he's going to eventually become evil because of how movies have made it, you know. You don't really know who Rocky is or how their friendship's going to end. So basically then we get to the point where they find the home world of the astrophage, and they find another organism that actually eats astrophage, and I think he calls it Tawmeba, because the I forgot why, because Taw is the sun and it's an amoeba, so he said Tawmeba. It's pretty funny that he calls it that, and that's just the name for the rest of the book. So they get a sample of it, and then they find out that it is susceptible to nitrogen. So because they're trying to basically make a pressurized thing that recreates the atmosphere of Venus, because they found the Petrova line. All of the astrophage go to the sun, and they go to Venus, and they come back. So they're basically reproducing on Venus. You find out that they take the light and then they split. And Ryland's actually the one who found out that. So they're trying to make it where they can't reproduce and they can kill them. So then he basically keeps putting them in pressurized containers and upping the nitrogen dose until it hits, I think it was 58 or 78, like 0.78 nitrogen, because it started at like 8.8. So then he finally gets it, and this is where the finale of the book comes in, the big emotional part where they have to say goodbye. And, you know, they probably will never see each other again, because Rocky is light years away, and yeah, they could use astrophage, but they have to go back and save their planet, and Rocky can live up to, I think it was like 300 years old, and, you know, Ryland's like 45, so it's like, you know, and they say goodbye, and and I love how he calls him friend, and they basically, and then, they take their Tawmebas back to their world, and that should be the end. And, you know, I realized that, you know, we had about, you know, this much left of the book at that point. So I'm like, something's going to go fucking wrong. And as you guess, yes, it does. So basically you find out that, and it's something that you could low-key, if you're like a scientist, you might have picked this up at, like, there's a really good way of, like, they constantly talk about how they're trying to make it adapt to survive in nitrogen, right? But it never hit me until they actually reveal it, that yes, they were doing that, but at the same time, the material, I forgot the name of the material that they were using to encase it in, you realize that at the time, he was also doing it for them to be able to get out of the cage, because, you know, yes, they're adapting to nitrogen, but they're adapting to the cage as well, you know, because he's making these things adapt to survive, so they're going to try to get out of the cage and survive, and they end up doing that. And he basically, thank God it doesn't get to the astrophage and the fuel cells, or he would have been screwed. So luckily he's able to finagle some stuff, but then he finds out Rocky, he calls the ship the Blip A, because when he first found it, it was Blip A, so that's what it's literally called the whole rest of the book. He basically realizes that Rocky is going to have the same problem, but because Rocky doesn't know about it. So he has to make and this is the biggest decision in the book. Again, this goes back to the theme of sacrifice, where he was already sacrificing himself, but then he found a chance. Like, this whole book has an arc with Ryland where he has to come to terms with, you know, he's on this mission, let's try to get home, and then he finds out that he lost too much fuel and he doesn't have enough to get home. And again, side note, the Beatles that he sends the info back have their own fuel system, so those are never really in jeopardy of sending Earth the info. And then he has to come to terms with, wow, I'm gonna die. Like, let me just work right now and try to get this answer to send back to Earth, and, you know, hang with Rocky until I'm dead. And then you have the thing of, oh my God, Rocky gave me. So it's like involuntary. It's like, you know, it wasn't like I didn't have control about losing the astrophage fuel, so I have to accept it. And then Rocky has enough fuel because they overcompensated. So then he gets the fuel, and now this is the first time where he has to decide himself: is should I go home, I make it in 11 years, or should I go help my friend Rocky and send the info to Earth and probably never make it back to Earth? And I love how they reveal that he chose to go save Rocky, because it starts off after a space and it says, I'm sorry, Rocky. And I really thought he was like, I have to go home. And then it explains, you know, blah, blah. Then he's like, I know you wanted to see one of these, but this is my last one. So you find out that he is using the last beetle, because Rocky throughout the book wanted one of the beetles to, like, work on. He's actually, like, a really smart alien. He carries this fucking book, like, heavy. And he's like a mechanic as well. He's making things throughout the whole story. And Xenonite is the material he has. He's like a hexagon type thing. And then he says, so you find out that he is going back to save Rocky, and this is one of the best moments in the book for me, and this is where I almost cry, where he comes back and he's really hoping Rocky's there, and he said, and then Rocky says, "You came back for me?" Question. He says, "You came back for me?" Question. Like, you were a great friend. And they do jazz hands and stuff. And it goes back to right when they left to go back home. Rocky says, "Be careful, you are a friend now." And he says, "Thanks, you are a friend also." And Rocky says, "Thank." And it's funny, obviously, because it just says "thank," but it's such a hitting moment because you can tell they really formed a bond. And I love that he goes back to save Rocky. And basically, they save Rocky, and the book ends with him staying on Rocky's planet. And basically, Rocky's planet has like 29 psi, so it's impossible for him to be outside because it's scorching hot, 29 psi. So the leaders of this planet make him like a big dome, and he's basically teaching. He's doing what he loves the best, which is teaching, and he's teaching little tiny, rocky creatures. I forgot what they're called, iridiums, I think they're called. And what's funny is every book I get, which I probably shouldn't do, I skip to the end page and read the last line of the book just to guess where I'm going. And I read that, and the last lines are, "Who here can tell me about like how fast the speed of light is?" And it said, "Raise your hand," or something like that. So I thought he made it back home, and then I read it, and then I found out, oh, he's teaching, these little like Rocky species about space, and I just think that's a great ending for him. Because, he's doing what he loves, and now he's with Rocky, but he's mainly, like I said, doing what he loves. He was never accepted on Earth, so, now he's accepted here. And he found acceptance, even though it's not with humans. And I do thank God they gave you confirmation. I was going to be so pissed if this book ended without confirmation that the Beetle did make it back to Earth because they see the light of the soul, which is our sun, back to normal, which means they fixed that problem. Andy Weir actually has said in an interview that he has plans. I think he is working on a sequel for this book. He said he's had plans for the sequel, and apparently recently he was found in some Reddits asking about designs for a certain flag in this universe that he made. So I do think that he is writing a sequel, which would be cool. I think it would be really cool for a book to take place on Earth about them getting the Talmibas back, even though they have instructions, just trying to figure that out. I think that'd be really cool. But guys, please go read this book. It is great. It is obviously sci-fi, which I love, but at the end of the day, it's really about the connection between Rocky and Ryland Grace, and it's one of the best bromances ever. I love Rocky. He's probably one of my favorite characters in any book. I just can't even give him justice how great he is. Like, anytime he's like talking or explaining what he does, it's so great. And the length these two will go for each other, even though they've only known each other for like a month, is insane, and I love it. 10 out of 10, guys. Go read it. Thanks so much for watching. I know this is different. I just really wanted to talk about this book. Have you read it? Have you seen the trailer? If you have read it, let me know what you thought down below. Let me know if you will read it if you haven't, and if you saw the trailer, let me know what you guys think. As always, it's been Joey. Peace out.